Welcome to the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek. The Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek delivers a look into the world of manufacturing with a focus on stories and trends that lead you to better solutions. Our guests share tips and outcomes that will help improve your productivity. I'm Dave McKenna, your host. I'm the practice leader of smart packaging at Grantek. And today I'm joined and very happy to be joined by William Barnette of Kraft Heinz. William is an application developer, database administrator, project manager. Previously, I knew him as transactional data coordinator. He was the SAP police. And he's created everything from full-blown applications to thousands of scripts for end users. He's a Visual Basic VBA, VB script specialist. William has been working with Kraft Heinz for over 34 years, and he currently serves as a senior project manager focused on digital manufacturing. Again, very happy to have you on the show, William. And I don't think that does it quite justice because, again, the SAP part, you didn't even throw that in there.
Yeah, it was a little short, Dave. Let's be honest.
We got to keep it. We got to keep it reasonable.
I know we got to keep. I know you got to keep the length down. So a small smattering of skills. No,
bites cost money. So
that's
yeah,
right. That's right. Yeah, zeros and ones
money.
aren't free.
Absolutely. So, so William and I met each other during an SAP implementation that was a sort of 2-year period for myself, or blended into 2.5. And William Barnette was at Newberry, South Carolina at the time, and still kind of is. But we met at Newberry and really had a great time on an SAP rollout. As just if you ever lived through one of those, it's a challenging kind of thing. So very, very happy to have you on the show. And happy to kind of hear your story and share where you think things are going in the future, but also hear about you and your career. And I think it's really I found it an interesting piece. So I want to share it with the audience. So thanks for coming on the show, William.
Oh, thanks, Dave. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So for our listeners, how did you get into manufacturing? You're at Kraft Heinz. Everybody knows Kraft Heinz, major food manufacturer, big company, large plants. How did you get into manufacturing?
It is a sad tale, Dave. No, right after college, I've got a degree in computer science, and so I had told my dad, I said, listen, I'm going to go to Charlotte and become a big time programmer. And that was, I think, the exact words I used. I'm going to become a big time programmer. What I need you to do is fund me, get me an apartment, something like that,
Yep.
so I could go there and, and be a big star in programming. And my dad had a different idea. He said, I've got an idea. Why don't you go and earn some money, and then you go and fund yourself to be a big time programmer, Charlotte. So which I didn't like his plan nearly as much as mine. I thought my plan was superior in every way. But it's my dad. My dad already worked for was Louis Rich then, which was owned by Oscar Mayer, which was then bought by Kraft, and then then Philip Morris and all that kind of good stuff. So he said, I can get you on at the plant. You can make some money. So I really didn't want to work. Nobody wants to work at the place that their dad works.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, then you're there. And this was before you couldn't set up a GoFundMe at the time.
No, that didn't exist. Yeah, I'm pre a lot of things in my age. So this was definitely, pre, World Wide Web, really full adoption type of thing. So I had totally planned. I tried to sync the interview. I don't know if this is a story.
Oh, yeah.
I share with you.
I
tried to sync the interview because I did not want to work here. And it was like, I don't want to work with my dad every day. So I came into the interview in shorts and flip-flops, knowing
no way.
there's no way that they will hire me.
This is for those of you who just to add a little more color and context to this. This is a meat packing facility, and they actually have like live turkeys come in, and then they are slaughtered, and then they go out in a different form. Yep. So you're wearing like flip-flops to it.
Yeah. So I came in flip-flops and shorts to a meat plant, knowing that then I would fail the interview, and then I go find a job somewhere else and do something else because who wants to work where their dad works? And even went on a tour. That was the funny part. They got me. So I had boots with no socks, a coat that didn't quite reach my boots. And they took me on a tour and amazingly hired me. I was so outdone. that my
It
plans
just
had
shined
failed.
through your inner, your
Well, what they ended up selling me on was like, well, it's really not so much the quality. We talked to your dad, and you've got this background in computers, and there's a lot of things that we want to do with computers, and we need these other things done. So I ended up being what was called, unfortunately named a floater. Uh, it was a quality, we would call that like a utility job now. So I broke everybody out for like breaks and lunches kind of things.
Okay.
But when I wasn't doing that, I got to work on different things. And of course, I was classically trained in these languages, which used none of them in the beginning. It was like, what do you know about Lotus? And I was like,
Oh,
not a lot. Well, we need to program some stuff in Lotus. So I got to do some of that. And then I kind of had a series of jobs. We talk about it here sometimes, that I had this crazy route that I took, because I went from there, and then I ended up working for production, kind of as a clerk. Every time it was always computers were involved. And my goal was eventually to get into what we called the computer room. That way I could, fix PCs and get to work on programs. And you know me, I'm a code monkey. All I ever really wanted to do is I just wanted to write code.
mhm.
And so if I had to do whatever dirt job I had to do to, to write code, that's what I wanted to do. So I ended up, I went through, uh, did time cards. That's how far back we're talking, is we had time cards, and we had the big, huge IBM punch machines that the keyboard was upside down. It used to drive me crazy because the numeric keypad on it is not like the keypad on your
Oh, it
keyboard.
was like
It's
a
more like a
phone?
phone. It's a
Yeah.
phone. It's upside down. So I ended up doing it left-handed because I couldn't retrain my right hand. So I would sit side.
Fun fact. William
Yeah,
Barnette's right hand can do the 789 computer keyboard,
that's right.
computer number pad, and the left hand can do a phone number.
Well, what was funny
That's a
was
superpower right there, man. I mean,
is, if you've ever seen those key punch machines, they're these big monsters. And so I ended up sitting kind of side saddle, because I'd have to sit sideways so I could do it with my left hand, but I could retrain my left hand. I just couldn't. My right hand, as soon as I lost concentration, it would go back to a numeric keypad, and then people were getting crazy hours, right? So so I had to do it left-handed. I did that for a while, and long story short, a couple of different jobs. I finally got into the computer room, and then I had different levels of systems jobs for, oh my goodness, the next 15 some odd years. So, and then I actually got, so then for a brief
so
period
you
of
were
time,
really IT at that point, as
I was
opposed
IT. Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah. I
weren't
should
in
have
the
said that.
PLC side or the
No,
medical.
I did not touch the PLC side of the world
Okay.
until kind of, I had a brief time where I got outsourced uh, to EDS for a short period of time. My chair never changed. Kraft kind of
That was
outsourced
part of
all
the
the.
deal you made on, like, I'll
Yeah,
stay. I'll come
yeah.
over to this new
um,
company, but I got to
right.
keep the same
Right,
chair. I mean,
I'm gonna keep the same chair. It's a very comfortable chair. So uh, then when I came back from that, and that was a very good experience. I had a very good experience over there with EDS. It later was bought by Hewlett Packard. Came back, and then I met you. And I met you when I came back, because I came back actually to bring in SAP,
mhm.
which it's part of the thing behind that was the guy that they were working with before. And I don't know if you had ever worked with him. He left right very, very close to when we were getting close to go live.
Okay.
So they were all of a sudden kind of scrambling, and then we got to talking, and I ended up coming back, and then that was my first experience with the SAP, and then that's kind of how I met you. And then, as and we can always talk about that. We had a lot of good times. There's a lot of hard work, as you know. Those
Yep.
very, very long days, very, very long, and those were definitely the days where you did stuff yourself. Because I think you remember the days where, like, we were out, I was out there, me and Dave Curie were out there wiring the trailer, yeah, so that we had power and
Yeah.
connectivity and everything else, just to service this event. And then I ended up, the deal was I was supposed to do that for 2 years, and then the plant manager said that I could do. He would make a job if he had to, a systems job for me that'd be tailor made for me. And then the day we went live, he retired. And then his number two, who the only other person to know my deal, retired the next week. So I
Mm.
ended up staying in there for
And
5 years.
there went, and your deal retired
My deal retired with
3
them.
microseconds after that.
So I ended up being being in SAP, which this is part of the general tale that I'll tell people sometimes. At a lot of these things at the time, I really begrudged them. I'm always begrudging whatever I'm doing right now. That seems to be my fate. And whatever I'm doing right now, later ends up aiding me immensely. So whatever stage I'm at, the thing I did before that I used to complain about always seems to come back and help me out. So I had this 5 years of SAP, and then I became a continuous improvement engineer for a while, and I worked for maintenance for a little bit, and then I ended up becoming a systems engineer. And that was I got to program, I got to do a lot of stuff. That's actually when when I kind of came into a little bit of the OT side of the world, because I ended up we had some issues with formulation, and the plant manager at the time came to me and said, William, what can you do? We need to stop this. And I said, well, what's my budget? Nothing. Okay, let's start from there. And so that's how
I'm ready. So you said,
I'm
put
ready.
me in, coach. I'm
That's
ready.
right. Put me in the game, because at first I'm thinking, oh, this must be a big project. I'll get a lot of, get some money. I'll buy something. And he said no. And then these famous words people like to use to manipulate me over my entire career is like, you're supposed to be smart. I think you can figure it out.
Figure it out. I didn't write.
And
Do you mind if I write that down?
yes, right. It is
You may have
my
told the
kryptonite.
internet your kryptonite.
Yeah,
Just so you
it
know.
is my
So,
kryptonite, because if you say that, I get incensed and such. Well, yes, I am smart. I will figure this thing. So that's how I came to know Ignition, because I was looking for something, and we were kind of we were kind of looking to see what could I do with what we had. So the first thing was, and I over the years I've become very good at making something out of nothing, and usually it has to do with take a very good inventory of what you have, right?
yep.
And Ignition was a program, and I saw what the maintenance guys had done with this, and they had done some really cool stuff, but they hadn't really programmed anything, and they hadn't really talked to any databases. So I was given a 2-week time frame, but I
2
was
weeks
given
for this.
yeah
Oh.
what it ultimately became Wild Child, really I ended up doing in 2 weeks. The core of it, I would say, but it was also like one of the first times in my career anybody let me do one thing for 2 weeks, where they
Mm.
actually said you cannot knock on the door if your printer's not working. William's got to do this thing. So I got kind of, I don't know, that was probably a great way to learn Ignition, to be honest with you, because I had to. And then we put that together, and I kind of, as you know, I kind of fell in love with Ignition after that, because first of all, I thought it was so flexible, and if even if you don't have a background, you can kind of jump into it really quick. If you've got a programming background, you can really jump into it fast, and you can do really nice things. And so I did that. That was a really great experience with being the systems engineer. Later, and I got to not spend too much time on my path here. Later,
No, we got this is. Go
that's
ahead.
right. We got all the time in the world. Continuous. I became a continuous improvement manager here, the CI manager,
Yep.
and then I did that for a bit, and then eventually I ended up, I guess Oliver Ganshar, in the digital manufacturing group, noticed me. Actually, it was on a meeting. We were talking about some Ignition stuff, and he was on that meeting, and he talked to me about working with the digital manufacturing group. And then that took kind of a bit, and then kind of at the beginning, that kind of takes me to the beginning of the year, and then I started working for Oliver on the as project manager for digital manufacturing. And then recently I've moved over to part of his team, which is the AI team. So very recently on that. So that kind of takes you down. In amongst all of that is a lot of different. I've been a finance super. I left out being a finance supervisor and all these kind of different things. Like I said, I took a bunch of different paths here, but the biggest thing that's always helped me out in life, because I always tell you I have an unfortunate amount of knowledge about SAP, as I like to say, because I always I want to forget this. I want to forget SAP, and I can't tell how many times that it comes up, and it's just like
They never funded the therapists after the
yeah,
project was
yeah, I
complete.
know, It's
You had to pay for that yourself. I mean,
so
great. Honestly, William, great story. And I think this is for the folks listening. This is not well. We've all met these people. When you go to enough plants and you tour enough times, you meet There's people you meet who, I remember somebody in a Minnesota facility that I went to for Kraft Heinz as well. And you meet some of these people, they got 20, they got 30 years experience, and they've done 10 or 15 different jobs. And this is a great story for, I mean, you did say begrudging and incensed, which is, I think,
Yeah.
a key part of your success
Right.
and your work ethic. But you look at your career, right? You have worked on the line. You
Mhm.
have been next to the operations. You've done the job of manufacturing, of packaging, of running stuff, and you've seen some of the finance piece, and you've seen the business side of stuff, and great opportunity. It was an amazing one for me. It was an amazing one for you hearing to do an SAP deployment. So you really know the nuts and bolts of how this gigantic system that runs the entire business actually functions, and some of the stuff it does, and some of the stuff it kind of, yeah, we sort of made it do this thing here, but yeah, that got us through. You know how it all works in the back end, and to have that level of experience of understanding manufacturing and that company, right? I mean, you're a Kraft Heinz expert, and then to be able to that be the person who moves into AI and digital manufacturing, I think is an amazing asset to Kraft Heinz. And yeah, and I love it. You're right. The stuff it's surprising, the stuff you're doing that becomes maybe it is and it isn't, but the harder stuff. I mean, this is the answer to your begrudging, right?
Right.
And then it's you complain about it, but man, it was useful later. It's the hard stuff. It's probably the hard stuff that really, there's some sort of line about crucibles and folding metal or something, and
Sure.
molten steel. I don't know. It's not coming to me
Yeah.
right now, but it's the hard stuff that builds you up and that becomes useful knowledge after. So great. Should have gone barefoot, man. The flip flops. If you just shown up
I
barefoot to the
know. I
interview,
know. I just knew. I know. You go into a meat plant. Come on. You have flip flops. That's a clear indicator. That was my era's neck tattoo, right?
that was my.
Like if you go into a job interview with a neck tattoo, you're saying, I really don't
I
want this job.
I don't. I gotta. I'm not ready to think about that one. That requires some thought. I don't know.
I
Have neck
couldn't.
tattoos? Are neck tattoos?
I guess they're
Or
more. I'm not common now, but normally somebody comes to a job interview, the neck.
yeah.
Oh,
10 years ago, 20 years ago, you had a neck tattoo. That meant
yeah, you're
something.
just saying.
You know
Maybe a
what?
s-
Now
maybe a
it's
skull tattoo. Maybe it's moved
now
up.
it's maybe now it's who doesn't have a neck tattoo. I
Like
mean,
if
what
you're
are you doing showing up here
because
without
if
a
you're
neck tattoo?
tattooing your skull, you're committed to something.
That's
That's a
that's
commitment.
that's deep. Oh, awesome. Great background, great story, and an ignition story. So I think this is where I'm also a big fan of ignition
Yep.
for a lot of the same reasons. Databases. Uh, I mean, I started as a PLC programmer, built enough stuff in PLCs. There's so many times you had data, and you can make a data structure, you can make a UDT in a PLC, you can store things in arrays so you can repeat things. But the amount of stuff you can do, the ways of doing things, and the clunkiness that comes from doing it in a PLC, and the limitations. Oh, I need to store an extra piece of data about each of those pallets that are moving. Well, now I got to like re-download to my controller and redo a whole bunch of stuff.
Yep.
You don't have any of that in a database. Has so much more flexibility. It's so much faster. So if I could just combine this and then that, and then put that on the screen, and then join these with that, that's the right tool for a million things. And databases have been around since forever. They're totally figured out. There's a way to design it. You go through the steps for denormalizing and all that for your design. And ignition, I feel strongly, ignition's really brought that to the plant floor, which is um, which is huge, because that's the right way to handle data. It's the right way to track things. It's the right way to do transactional stuff and store records on anything. So great. I completely agree on that. And the flexibility to, I mean, you really did a hackathon, right? But the flexibility of you already had so you already had the license before you had your
Yeah, they were already the maintenance guys were using it to build screens to show like and they make stuff that looks so much better than mine. They're really good at the pretty stuff. That looks exactly like the machine
Yep.
when it's on. It's moving. They did these really good screens, so they already had it. So which is
Okay.
why I used it because I dabbled with because no matter what, no matter how many languages I can program, in my head, it's always Visual Basic. So I was like, at one time I was dabbling with doing it in Visual Basic because it could have, and I did a little mini prototype, but kind of once I got exposed to Ignition, I was like, oh, this is so much easier because it's right into the PLCs is so much easier. But to your point, one of the things that, and it's not to make this an Ignition sales pitch, but one of the things that I really love about Ignition, besides being able to talk to the machine itself, is I've used it in applications that where I didn't even talk to a PLC. They kind of downplay how good they are at dealing with databases. So, I've written things that just use it as a front end for a database.
Yeah.
That had some data to do something with, and it's like, the front end that the company had was terrible. They had a good back end but a terrible front end, so we rewrote the front end in Ignition. But the key point being flexibility. It's very flexible. We got guys who don't do any programming at all, and they do some really cool stuff with it to have no code in it at all.
Yep.
And then if you've got a little bit of coding experience, you can really make some nice stuff. And I know the things Grantek does, they can make visualizations and things like that. I didn't get very deep into that because mine was more plant floor and controlling. I always say I had the Tonka truck interface on mine because it was for touch screens with people with big fingers. And
Yep.
speaking of that, one of the things we were talking about being on the floor, one of the things we actually did was when I was doing Wild Child, which is batch management for people. It's controlling blenders. Did some of that on the floor. So actually, I was propped up against the wall with the laptop, and because you know how you can push the application right there. I was actually changing the screen on the fly with the laptop, pushing the program out because we were kind of adapting it to the user. We're always laughing that really and truly the interface is based off of one guy that I worked with originally in 10K, our blender 10K7, because he had really big fingers and he had trouble.
That's really who you want, the guy with the largest. Hey, we're
Yeah,
making an application. I'm solving your plant floor program. I'm solving your plant floor operations problems. I need one thing from you. I need the guy with the biggest fingers
right.
coming
Because
over.
of course, I programmed it at my desk, right, with a mouse. So you can make
Yeah,
some nice little
that's
pretty buttons. Take it onto the floor. His finger is twice the width of mine. So every time he's hitting 2 or 3 buttons, and then you're like, oh, okay. I start changing the screen size, but then it actually kind of opened my eyes up a little bit. It's like I need to be out here with this guy because he would do things obviously I would never think to do because I'm like, oh well, of course you only scan here and you scan here, and then he would do other things, and you're like, okay, I need to account for that. And so we were very, very kind of tightly integrated. It kind of actually changed a little bit of my trajectory of programming because before I was much more of I like to think classical, just sit at my desk, do it, give it to you, and then when you said I wanted to do this and this, and just complain in silence and make it and change it. But when you're really working with the user, kind of almost in real time, what you can do with it, I think is a great, great tool. And again, we've had it for 5 years. We haven't had any more formulation since we put it in place. And we upgrade it and we do things to it. So
a great story. I love the you got me you get the gears rolling in my head. I love this. That's a great opportunity to be able to develop right next to users and test and that. And I
mhm.
know I'm just trying to think. I'm rolling back through the many of the projects we've done, and I'm a fan of sometimes in pharmaceutical stuff, or others will do a functional spec. So you're screenshotting all the screens, and this is going back in time more, but you'd screenshot the screens and review it, and you get some good insights with that. And but sometimes you have the people that are buying the project, right, as opposed to or managing the project, as opposed you got to kind of fight and push to get operators or people who will actually be using the system accessible. I know we did a good job of that when we did the SAP rollout, but it's hard to get that. But it's a great, and generally in a lot of projects, the view I think has been if you're reprogramming it on site, it's because this stuff it's because there's a lot of waterfall mentality in
Yeah,
automation. And it makes sense because a lot of
yeah,
what we do is like you're putting a physical panel in, you're putting in a cartoner, like you got your downtime window and all that. So yeah, you want to prepare in advance and waterfall and get that thing commissioned to get out of there because they need to get it running. So there is, with good reason, a lot of waterfall stuff, but that's a great opportunity to develop right next to an operator and then kind of make those UI UX changes and have a on the fly and have a platform that's flexible enough to support you doing that. At the same time, it's very cold in the plant.
It's
I've
very
been in
cold,
that plant.
and I
It's
didn't have a
cold.
desk. I didn't have like so.
Well,
So
you had the
I'm leaned up on the guardrail.
no,
You know, my hand.
okay. The traditional programming desk when you're commissioning a system is usually a garbage can. If you're lucky, you
Yeah,
can get like a good.
yeah.
Sometimes some
No,
people are
no
fancy and
garbage
they
can. I had the
yeah the
guardrail.
garbage can.
I had the guardrail, but it worked out. I mean, it worked out great. There was things we started actually hitting things like, you have users that have different some people are much more comfortable with computers than other people,
For sure. Yeah.
especially at that time, because a couple of years ago. And one of the things that I saw with him is that I had built some things for double clicks. Very
Hmm.
simple. You just go on a screen, double click, and he would hit it and then move his finger slightly and then hit it again. You're like, no, that's not a double click. And so you're trying to teach somebody how to do like a double click on something. And finally, I said, you know what? I need to make this work for him. So I ended up saying you can single click, and then I put a button. I put a button at the bottom. So if you single click, then hit the button, then it chooses it. And then if anybody wants to double click, they can double click. So the people that can handle a double click, they could. But again, it kind of opened my mind up about my programming moving forward, because I really had it to where, because once I was kind of done with that prototype, then the rollout was super simple. We really didn't have any issues because I'm literally programmed most of that out on the floor. Well, the interface stuff was on the floor. Like behind the scenes, of course, I like to be at my nice comfy desk
For sure. Yeah.
and
No, and
can do that.
you need to not be
Yeah. Well,
freezing.
it's kind of because it's kind of hard to do that stuff when people are beeping horns at you, to move. I'm like, out of the way. I
Yeah.
got to move this tank.
I mean, good. I think I gotta take a note here for myself. It's next time we're doing some heavier UI UX. I mean, this is if we can get an opportunity, I think that's a
Yeah.
great way and an appropriate agile way on the UI UX side. On the rest of it, the back end, the mechanical, the electrical, all that. That's you probably got to stick with waterfall on that. Curious question. Are you seeing kind of changes with more of that agile or with vendors or with how like
Well,
any of that you're seeing any kind of
agile, agile's a thing that until I don't know, 6 months, 7 months ago, I may have heard it, but I really hadn't
okay.
dealt with it. And it is really coming in very strong, especially, my boss, Oliver, was kind of an early adopter and has really adopted it wholeheartedly. And the thing that I'm noticing is that with the agile, even though, again, as I said before, whatever I'm doing, I don't like right now. Later, I appreciate it. So, so I
So
preface it with that.
current state, William Barnette doesn't like it, but that's a
But,
promising sign.
but, but I tell you what, I see the power of it, because one of the biggest things that I'm noticing with our group, especially, one of the things Oliver really prides himself on with digital manufacturing is speed,
Hmm.
being able to deliver things at speed. And the group I'm part of this. I got a self-serving, a fantastic group of folks that I'm honored to be on the team with these guys. In every group, you're always like, man, well, there's a good one, there's not, there's a good one, there's not. It's not like that with this group. They always say there's not a dud in the bunch. We've got people that are just fantastically talented, and have adopted this agile mentality. I'm probably the slowest to adopt it because I don't know, I'm one of the older ones, so maybe it's just taking me a little bit longer. But I'm definitely seeing the speed that it allows projects to execute at. Sometimes I'd be nice if some of the vendors were agile, were more agile about certain things. But I mean, obviously, when the one thing that's never seems to be in agile is finances. That's the one thing that if any group could benefit from agile,
Oh,
it would
finance
be,
group.
yeah, finance. I think finance needs to adopt that, because you know how it is. You're doing a project, but then you get to the money, and then it's like, oh yeah, oh hang on, slow down there, cowboy. Um,
Yeah,
but
budgets and stuff. Still,
yeah,
I'm
and I understand it. I don't want to be glib about it. I understand too. If it
no,
was my
I'm with you,
money,
man. Throw it out the window. Throw
yeah,
it. Fine. I'm living that right now, and career limiting comment personally. Yeah, I mean they do their budgets their way. I'm sure there's a reason, but to your point,
and I know
it'd
there
be
is.
nicer, a little more nimble. Like if we line all this up and it makes sense, can't we just go do it? Yeah.
I think sometimes I get a little bit on the signature thing. There's all these like all these 18 people have to really sign. Do they?
Mm.
Do they really? Is that guy really reading this? I think there needs to be something in there that I'm sure we can make a script to tell if they really scrolled through it all. It's like
Mm,
that guy ain't reading it. He don't need to be on the he don't need to be on the list. But I will say this. I've noticed how fast some of the projects have my teammates have gotten through using this agile process. And again, I'm coming into it, so I'm a little bit slower adopter than
okay.
some of my teammates. But that is a big, huge change. I think eventually all of Kraft will get moved onto it, especially because Oliver's group just keeps delivering, using this. I mean, sometimes the only thing that slows the group down is kind of the being on the money side of things, or and then what your vendors can do.
Hmm. Interesting. I mean, I think there's a huge whether it's exactly agile or not, or you're just breaking things into smaller projects which can be
Hmm.
delivered faster, and then there's value to the operations quicker, and then you move on to the next one. I think I agree and see a huge ton of value on it. Waterfall, you still got lots of construction in manufacturing stuff. There's still that physical side. There's still the, hey, we got to shut the line down for X time to do
Yeah,
Y. So I don't know that it goes all the way, but on the digital side there's certainly lots of room for small quick projects, and let's get things done faster. Let's get something done fast, right? So people can enjoy and benefit from it, and then move on kind of to the next one. But good.
yeah. It's definitely one of the bigger movements
Okay.
that I'm seeing, and like I say, our group is embracing it, wholeheartedly, and make and making some real differences with it. So I can't I
So
can't
so
poo-poo it.
that's some of kind of the software, and I think that's kind of, I'll segue that into this kind of next question, software world, and some of the faster movement of technology, and which gets us to industry 4.0. And what does it mean to you? Where do you is it some of that? Is it other pieces? What's it to
I
you,
think I,
and
I
what are you
think
seeing?
I think for me, as somebody who probably encompasses 3 and 4 in industry, is I kind of remember in the good old days, there was very siloed data, right? And I kind of came up through that era. So there was like your chosen people, your people that would figure out where data was, go get that data. They might even be the person that does the analysis on that data. So that's kind of, in all my roles, it's always kind of, been me. And so you're kind of the magician. It's very arcane, right? The tools were arcane. The analysis was, you had to know how to do the analysis, you had to do all these things. And one of the biggest changes that I've seen, say, moving into, say, the 4.0 world, whether you're talking about AI or you're talking about conceptualization tools or visualization tools, is what I like to call this sudden democratization of data. Is that we've got these tools now that not only can the plant manager or the CEO get data. They don't have to call me anymore and, hey, William, I need you to run a report for me to do this. Not only can they not do that, they can run it themselves, but the person on the floor can do the same thing. Anybody with access, to a computer there can go and know the same thing. You can know what machine is down. I mean, that's kind of where we're going to. If I'm in Kirksville, I can look at Newberry's data. If I'm in
Hmm.
Newberry, I can look at Kirksville data. If I'm the CEO, if I want to, I can literally look and say, you know, I could I could make a call and say, hey, why is this line down, right? Um, that's one of the bigger things. Now, obviously, that's one of them. And some of that democratization of data also lets us use the data in ways maybe we didn't originally intend. Because it's nice to have pretty charts and graphs, but people are actually starting to take some of the charts and graphs and understanding what it really means to like the equipment. So we use this for visualization. There's a company ST1 that we use, and a lot of people have started kind of using that data. But as we've gotten it down to the floor level, in some of the plants, like say a Davenport, they're looking at it and going, okay, I understand that, I'm seeing this pattern here. I can see it in my own chart, which they can do their own charts if they want to. They don't have to call ST1. They don't have to call me or anybody else. They can do their own with a little bit of, with a little bit of training. And they start actually understanding their process and they start making these changes. So
Mm.
so they can look at the data one way, a CEO can look at it, roll up. I mean, obviously they're, once you
Yeah.
get beyond a certain level, it's all about rolling it up. But I think that's one that, and then of course the move to AI and the things that we're seeing. Because I'm new, I'm just new on the team, but I'm already looking at the things that our team is looking at. I mean, we're trying to use we've got things like digital twin where they're taking and basically mimicking an entire factory. We would have just called it, in the before time, modeling. We used to have the modeling software, but the difference is now you can take modeling software and then pull in real data to it.
Mhm.
Live where, and as before, I don't know if you remember, I used to talk about that. I used to load a program in Witness, which was a modeling software, and it did a lot of great things. But this is like that, but now you've got live data in there. So you can then, the next stage is to take something like that to where you're having all this data come in live and you've got the models built, and then use the AI and the rules and the predictive analysis to say, oh, you know what, I'm looking at your pressure, I'm looking at the vacuum, I'm looking at all these different factors. I believe I think you're going to have to adjust your slicers in 18 hours because that's when it's going to get to you. And so that's there's things that they're working now. They're working on things so that you can talk to the line, figuratively. You can go to the line and ask it a question and say, how do I do a center line on this? How do I clean you? How do I
Hey,
repair?
Slicer, clean
Yeah, yeah.
yourself.
Hey, yeah. Hey, Slicer. Since apparently you didn't clean yourself, how do I do it? Right.
Don't
And
talk back to the I
so
mean,
it's
you got to be polite when you're. I mean, Siri, what's Siri
yeah,
going to do to you? But
yeah.
a
Well, you
slicer,
got to lock out, tag out
there's
first, of
blades in
course.
that thing.
Lock it out first,
No,
and then say,
interesting. Okay, so for you, it's data, it's more data, it's data automatically, and I think that's a pretty common theme among a bunch of guests. It's democratizing the data. I have a question or two on that one,
okay,
just to follow up, and comparing facilities, other people looking at it, and then we're taking that and we're pushing that into AI, and we're kind of doing some of the next steps. Do you find a lot of when it's accessible, when it's open, and people are looking at it with different contexts? The CEO wants one
absolutely.
view of it, somebody else wants a different, and they're able to look at it and kind of make business decisions from that. Do you find if it's open like that, like what levels are actually looking at this? Like, is a supervisor, or is it a rare supervisor?
We're
Is it
getting, we're
who?
getting now again. Now I have to be realistic. You know how businesses are. I think that some of that has to do with your own personal engagement
For sure,
into things.
100%.
You know what I'm saying.
Yep.
But we are getting everything from operators,
Really?
supervisors. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There's some people that once they kind of, it's taken longer. I'll be honest, for some people to get it, like that that they can go in there and they can do these things. But it's like once that hurdle
Sorry,
is
when you
kind of
say get it, you not for them to actually get,
understand, yeah, to
accept that
understand,
they can go do
right?
this.
It's just a
Yeah.
graph, right? It's just a graph. But when you have to help them a little bit sometimes with contextualization, this is the context of what this graph means, because otherwise it's just a graph. I'm like, oh, that's cool, up down, up down, up down. But to understand what it means, right? And that's once certain people get that, oh man, we've had some wonderful things from operators that start to realize, even themselves seeing patterns that we didn't necessarily see because they're close to it.
Off, they
So
know
they're
better
looking,
for sure.
yeah, they know better, so they're seeing like, oh, I understand that every time the seal head does this, I have this issue.
Mm.
And then they're like, ah, okay, So there's kind of this gotcha moment that, I got it on it, that we see with operators, supervisors, especially. And again, it varies a lot based on the person. Some people are, they they want to be involved, they want to be engaged. I think eventually it'll be everybody, but right now, some of this stuff's in its infancy, but we're already starting to see the move. They like to talk about use cases. Yeah, that's a nice buzzword that we have all the time. A use case of something. We're starting to get use cases from the floor. Whereas before, it might be a use case for myself or somebody on the team where they
Yep.
say, okay, well, this is how we figured out how to do something. But we're starting to get use cases from the floor where a team, I'll say Davenport, looked at the data the operators,
Yep.
and then they realize, oh my goodness, every time this costs me downtime. I get it, and so they're starting to review these things in their DPM meetings, the different type of meetings that they have, so that they can utilize that data to run better. Because I think more and more people understand that the better we do, the more money the company makes, the better thing is for everybody. People get more hours. If we can get more volume and all these things that are interrelated, so then they realize that by using the data, they can kind of make their life easier. Because
I mean,
like
that's
nobody wants
that's
downtime,
amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing to have that level of engagement, to have, and I don't know that you'll get that with everyone, but
it's
that's great.
early. It's early, but we're seeing
Okay,
it. We're
you're
starting to
seeing it.
see it to where they're pushing the rock a little bit. And some people they do. All of a sudden, you can just it's like a light bulb moment, whatever you want to call that. And I get it. I get it. And some people will, some people won't. But I think eventually, over time, everybody will. Uh, Again, some of the things that we've seen from some of the plants has been it's very encouraging when you see it, and they're coming up with their own use cases and say, hey, I figured out how to not lose batches of batter, because when I see these signals, I realize that this is an issue I'm about to have.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're already seeing it, and that's just them looking at um, contextualized and visualized data. So a lot of them, whether it be from, I mean, we got different things. I always talk about ST1 because I really like the product, but there's things we've got in Power BI. I mean, there's still some Tableau floating around like that,
Yep.
but they're starting to be, I think, less afraid of the tools. And I think sometimes there's still something of a barrier of people like, oh, I don't want to touch this. I don't want to mess it up. And they're starting to kind of realize you're not going to mess it up. Just dig down a little bit. And we're also trying to change the whatever you want to call that mentality of, it's okay. It's okay for you to spend some time looking at this. you know, but breaking that time out to say, for these meetings and stuff, let's look at this data. Let's see what it means. Can we figure out, what's going on? Whereas before, run the line.
Yeah.
They're
I mean,
seeing the value.
that's a huge. Let me. I got 2 points on what you said. So, like, I'm a big fan of Power BI. We've used Power BI. We've implemented
Mhm.
Power BI with customers to kind of help. And you're right. There's that barrier of, this isn't not just data to make a graph. It's all the numbers are there that built up this graph. So
Mhm.
click away, drill down, drill in, add break it up, do something,
Sure.
and so it can show you what you need to see. It can show you in the way you need to see it to be able to learn something or make a decision. But good point on to get that plant engagement, to get that plant floor level engagement, operators, supervisors, frontline people doing the job. You got to make room for them to do it. You got to be serious
Mhm.
about, yeah, they're going to need some time to look at this stuff. We're going to train people. We're going to pay the money to drop this system in. I think those are generally accepted and understood. If we're going to put in a big data platform, we got to pay money, we got to spend time, we got to do it, we got to buy software. Then we got to train people on it. But then you got to make room for them to use it. And that's
Mhm.
that's not a one-time project cost or time or so on and so forth. That's a culture change, which
Yep.
you hear these automotive kaizen and all that kind of stuff, right? That's in that world, but you got to do that, or no one's got the time. To your point, run the line, run the line, run the line, go run the line. So
Yeah, it's definitely a culture change, and I can definitely say that we've got leadership in place now that are valuing that. And now, of course, we're also having to say, okay, these things they did are generating dollars, real
right.
dollars. And I think that's also the eye opener, is when that's why, like Oliver, he's really big on these use cases, because he said, I need to make sure that we're showing that what folks are doing, and how they're using it is hitting the bottom line.
And that's
Because
one of the
once we
biggest.
get that,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I said that's one of the biggest hurdles, right? Is because they're pretty graphs. Pretty
Yeah.
graphs don't necessarily make you money, but how you use them and how they're applied. and what it really means in the culture. That could make you real money. So that's kind of one of the things he's really big about. So let's show how this is a really great use case. Let's make sure that we show how this saved us money or avoided a cost. We saving money's better, but avoiding a cost,
Yep.
if at all, possible. So taking it to the bottom line, that's the big thing too. I think that's also one of the bigger pushes too, is to start showing folks, more of like, when you do these things, this is the real dollar impact of the things that you do. How you really saved, and how that kind of, from bonuses to whatever, kind of directly impacts
Yep.
you yourself.
I mean, charts and graphs are great. You're right, but it's for business value. It's to make the business decisions. It's to drive change,
Yep.
and that's a big pitfall in industry 4.0 and data is people boil the ocean, they log everything, and then, well, what came of
Mhm.
it? So if you're having, I mean, great story. If you're generating these plant decisions and plant changes and from the plant, organically from the plant, you came down as corporate. We're here to help. We're going to measure everything and put it on a graph. We're here to help you. But then actually to get the plants
Yeah,
engaged, then
that
get
that's
results.
usually what a plant is the most afraid of, is when you say those words. I'm here to help you.
I'm from corporate. You have to add
I'm
I'm from
from
corporate.
corporate. I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
You just see the look on their face. Oh no.
But now it's help me help you. Yeah. I
That's
don't know
right.
if they buy it right away, but that's the truth
Right.
of what you're doing, which is a great.
Yeah, so we got a couple different programs that are like that, and it's more, and we're seeing like this groundswell from the folks. I mean, we have other things like connected worker, which is kind of like trying to get rid of paperwork,
Yeah.
in the plant. Because when you have a manufacturing system, I know every business has one. Ours is like called KHMS, for Kraft Heinz management system. But it's always, those practices that you have to do every day, and these things, and so instead of having all this paperwork and spreadsheets, we're moving to tablets and digitizing all that data, then actually pulling all that data together for analysis. That's again, we kind of, we're taking that to folks. There's people on my team that's involved with that, and have this huge success. And the hourly line people, they have been giving a lot of kudos for that, because like, oh, somebody listened, because I had too many things to put on paper and too much in a spreadsheet. This makes my life easier. So when you get people kind of going into the process and buying into the process, you know you get much better results.
For sure.
You're like,
You
oh,
get some
people
wins.
listen to me, and you got real feedback, and then I'm actually impacting something. So,
Oh, great story. So where are you seeing the ROI from this? Like what kinds of
well, I
mentioned
mean,
I think you mentioned predictive maintenance. Hey, 18 hours from now, you're
yeah,
something's going to happen.
predictive maintenance. I know we're now. I do a lot of stuff more on the meat side of the world, so yield is everything for us. So a lot of things for us is trying to use the technology to help us increase our yield. Um, one of the things right now I'm just starting to kind of get into is like rurology and viscosity. We're trying to use the data that we're getting off of the systems, and amps of, from blenders, to figure out, what's the perfect viscosity for batter. And with
Mhm.
that, we can potentially shorten, because whenever you're blending meat or whatever, the times that are picked are kind of, once you get to a certain point and it works, you kind of stop and go, well, you must blend it 30 minutes. Trying to use the data, like in just a very small case, trying to use that data to say, well, maybe really and truly, based on the viscosity, this should be 20 minutes. And that's, maybe 10 minutes say, but what's more important is that might give us a better consistency in product. And the more consistent the product is, then usually that's the higher the yield. Looking at these flow meters, viscosity meters, trying to pull all this data. I mean, I guess without too many details, pulling all this data in and using it to make a better product, but also for us, a better yield on these things, to help us minimize waste. Predictive maintenance, getting into vibrational analysis, as I'm sure you probably, seen, businesses do. Um, Trying to do better. I mean, PMs are great, but that's kind of a real slow loop. Trying to do a better job of looking at the data and having it kind of predict. We've got programs that are coming in that can kind of help us say like, okay, well, maybe that shouldn't be a 2-month PM. Maybe that should be a 1-month PM. We can save this money. For us, everything's trying. We're whatever program that we're pulling in, it has to kind of either increase the quality or it has to generate savings for the bottom line. And so that's kind of the push for all these, and then we're seeing it. The things that they're doing with the digital twins or the modeling is another big, trying to say, okay, if you're maximize being able to make ketchup, there's a whole, I was very ignorant of ketchup, until I kind of got on this team, other than I really liked it, on fries, was getting into these
I was
guys
an expert on fries, but
I was an expert on
and you
fries.
can't give the recipes, the secret recipe. So
Right. I can't get, but we've got people on our team that are like fluid dynamic experts, because that's kind of, and take in the data that we're getting. The other thing too is there's also this process of going through infrastructure especially on the PLC side of the world, OT side of the world, and knowing that we've got to spend a little bit of money to kind of get better data from certain things. So all that's kind of pulling together, and we're seeing real results.
I
Now,
mean, so you're really using it in your core business. So, right, Kraft Heinz
yeah,
is a processed food manufacturer. You make you blend meat with spices. That's your
mhm,
batter. For those of you who are listening who are not sure what kind of batter we're talking about, so it's blended meat, which then gets pushed into a casing to make.
right. You can't make
Uh,
cakes with this batter.
Correct. It's not a cake, but that's your business. Your business is processed meat. So in the mixing stage,
Yep.
you're using Industry 4.0 and data to analyze the mixing, and are we over mixing, under mixing? How do
Yep.
we
Same thing
make
for
it
cream
better?
cheese.
Yeah.
All the different businesses that we have. That's one of the things I'm kind of starting to get exposed more and more to, is a little bit outside of meat, which has kind of been my focus over my life, more into these others, and seeing how some things are very similar and some things are extremely different. But the bottom line is trying to use all the technologies. The technologies, I mean, I think in the past, sometimes, you just went to a technology because you thought you should, or now there's a very focused effort on, okay, we're looking at this technology. What does it give us? How is this going to help us? And I mean, I know when Oliver goes through his process, when he's looking at vendors, he's looking at things like how fast can they go, and does this product is this product going to help us deliver to the bottom line? And let's put a use case together on here to save, all the, what, or an automation project. It's always got to be, how does this impact the bottom line? And that's the move. And of course, I don't want to oversell things and say, we're there now. We're making that journey.
Right.
I can see the changes. I can see the changes since January, since I came onto the team. And of course, have been with the company as long as I have. I've got kind of a wider view sometimes, because, well, shoot, half the people that I deal with have been with the company, say, less than 10 years. And I can say, wow, when I look at the speed of like how you implement a project now versus the speed that we did in the past. I mean, you look at like SAP, if we were doing that now, I think that would happen a lot faster than it did, when you and I were doing that. But again, everything was very much siloed there, and it relied on like 4 to 5 key people. Whereas now I think it's a lot more distributed. You've got more players in the game, and I think you can go a lot faster. So yeah, we're seeing real results.
Great. I mean, great. And you've got the discipline. I think that's the discipline to pick the projects, pick the vendors on things that are going to drive real solution. I remember hearing a story, somebody, a project manager or engineering manager director that connected with me, and it was, hey, I got to have an AI strategy because someone above me told me I have to have an AI.
Right. I need
That's not.
AI. Give it to me.
I need some AI. I need, quantity 4 AIs, please. And that's not really a recipe for success or a
No.
targeted project or a real business case being there. And you're doing it. You're maintaining the correct discipline on where you go.
Yeah. Because I can tell you this, being new to that AI team, they're not doing AI just because it looks really cool, in your job title. They're doing it because, which it kind of does, to be honest with you. But but they're doing it because, like, everything that we're working on, first of all, it's in the agile process. So you're having to hit things every, you got these 2-week spans, these sprints that you've got to hit. but it's also, they do these reviews with the customer, to say like, okay, these are the features, these are the things that we're working on, and making sure there's kind of that constant feedback to say, okay, just, are we delivering? Yeah, we're delivering. Or we're not, then what adjustments do we need to make to that process? So to your point, it's disciplined. It's very
Yeah.
disciplined. I think of everything being myself and being the old timer that I am. Uh, Sometimes I have to really plug my head into the discipline mode, because I'm used to a lifetime of 5,000 things happening at once and just trying to put out
Mm.
fires to okay, I need to, you have to be really disciplined. But that's great. I mean, again, it really helps to have a great team around you. And you know me, Dave, I'm critical of folks. So
Vicious
uh
at times, but
yeah, yeah,
good
that's right.
natured and cheerful, but vicious.
Yeah, but you know me, I'll be truthful about things, and I ended up on a team that, there's times I'm just looking for, like, I'm one of these guys is just faking. I know it. Um, and I haven't found it yet. Everybody I work with is really, really good at what they do. And then you're like, oh shoot, I got to make sure I'm not the low man on the totem
I'm not
pole.
the guy faking
I'm
it.
not the guy they're
Wait a
going like,
minute,
how
it's
did this
me.
guy get on the team? You know, we were at a dinner one time, and we were talking about it, and there's some young people on my team, and they were telling
Just
me the
just
age.
for our what is young? What's young? Just to add a little more
Well, as I
context.
found out, that half of the people on the team at the time were my son's age or younger, so 31 and younger.
There we go.
So I was
Got it.
like, oh my goodness, because when you tell them, like, I've been with the company for 34 years, and they're going like, I wasn't born yet. That's always disheartening. Like, and I think that too, one of the things I notice though is this younger generation that's coming through. Boy, they come in full speed. I mean, especially the folks that I'm dealing with. Because I think about when I came in young, undisciplined. But I don't think there was as much structure anyway in the system, so it was easier to be undisciplined. I notice now they come in there so professional. The young woman that's doing our connected worker, Lauren, she's very young. I think she's in her late 20s, and her technical ability and things. I think back to when I was that age, and I'm like, oh, I was a good tech person, but I don't think I was that professional. Oh my goodness. But here's somebody that's so at that age that then makes speeches to, the head of North America, for Kraft. And you're like, wow, they're coming in, but I think too, uh, Oliver has an eye for talent with people,
I
and
mean,
he
that's
he's
that's a
he's
huge
a
part.
good he's a good cherry. We call him cherry picker. He knows. He gets those people that I always like. I always try to get them to do the presentations. So I was like, yeah, man, let me be in the background. I like being in the background. And
I mean, if
but
you need the right people to make these kind of
oh
transformative
my goodness,
company
yeah,
level
yeah,
changes, and
there's some definite superstars on that. I'm constantly telling them like, man, I can't believe how put together you are at that age. That's ridiculous. We,
well, that's the
we,
key part. I think the presentation part. I mean, we talk a lot about the technology and connecting with AI and computers, machines, bits, zeros and ones, but you got to make this stuff go. You got to get the plant on board. You
Mhm.
need to listen to their use case changes or their feedback and so on. So there's a huge rolling any of this out. There's a huge level of you need a high level of integrity and professionalism, which you've alluded to make this successful, to make the plant kind of buy in on it. You need to be able to communicate well to them. You need to be able to make their lives easier and kind of listen and show that you're listening. And those are all
Mhm.
human elements, human aspects, and you need a strong team of the right kind of people who have all those human characteristics to make all this industry 4.0 successful, I think. And then you're seeing this, so that's
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We're getting and they kind of have to, because they're getting hit with some hard questions. Because history, and then of course you know how it is in business. Margins get pushed, especially when inflation was kind of was running rampant. You really, really have to be able to articulate what's being done, the steps that you're taking, and how this will really impact the bottom line. And I'll say this generation, I can say that because I'm older, and this generation that's coming through now, they seem that we're really getting people who can do that, where boy, there's no way. And at 20, I think about myself at 28. Good grief.
Well, I think
You
it's a YouTube. Is it? I'm going to say it's YouTube. I wonder. I mean, it's interesting some of the stuff that's maybe going on. I wonder. I've read. What did I read recently? That there's a real challenge. Well, we'll start with the positive one. So, in a world of YouTube where everyone is on their own TV show or on
hmm
somebody's TV show or some point, and we have podcasts with such as this one, right?
Right.
Everybody's on radio,
Right.
everybody's on TV. The level of presentation skill is probably light years ahead like the average presentation skill is way ahead of the average presentation skill 50, 30, 40 years ago, where you put a camera in front of somebody and they kind of froze like a deer
Right.
in the headlights. Now everybody's used to that. Interesting point. And then the counter one I've read recently was people are having trouble finishing novels big time. Like reading a novel, like a longer
Right.
story is 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 maybe on the path to becoming like a niche thing. It's, like ballet and dancing is more of a niche or maybe a
Well,
bad example, but yeah, it's like it's not a normal everyday thing. Like, yeah, of course everyone reads novels in school, like, or has read novels or reads. It's like a super niche. You go to your it's like going to Renaissance fair. It's not for everyone. It's a niche kind of
sure.
hobby and interesting. I mean, we'll see, but
Yeah, I think though, like you said, that's it's a bit generational because I'm old enough. I actually have grandchildren, so I know it's like two things that I always notice is that the short attention span. So like TikTok's too long for them.
for your grandkids.
Yeah, for grandkids. So they're like, this video's taking forever. What are you talking about?
I
It's a
was just
30.
getting into it.
It's like a 37. Oh, and they're always finding some app that's like, it's like, oh, I like this one. It does like 8 seconds. Hey, what is wrong with you? 8 seconds. And
What
the
is
other,
the, so? Are we going to go?
right?
Where does it end? Are we going
Yeah,
down
where
to
does
like?
it end? Your video's like, and that's it. You're like, oh, that was hilarious. The other
Okay,
thing, the other thing I can't, just as we're talking about stuff, it's just generational. Is like the move from, like, I've got this because I guess I'm older. I want the biggest TV humanly possible, right? I want
it
I
was
want
a
to have
sign
to
of your success as
yeah,
as
I want to reinforce my wall to support a TV. Like, okay, I'm gonna have to knock this wall or something to put this TV in. That's kind of my mindset. So I have this really nice big TV, and when you have younger people that or my grandbabies over, they would rather watch the same thing in their hand, and I'm like, no, I'll put it up on the screen for you. Now I just watch it this way. You're staring. Like, I don't want to see my fingers on the end of the video. I want it. But I guess
I'm
it's too.
I'm just
That's why movies, don't do as well as they used to and stuff. Because you take you got to like take them to the big screen. Well, we'll just wait till it comes to the TV. It's not the same,
I want to see it on. I'm waiting for the small screen.
right? I like, because every time I go to the movies, it makes me hate my TV because I go like, oh, this screen is bigger than mine. I think I might need to add to the house to just.
I mean, the way things are going, you could just go buy a movie theater. That would probably be
I know it.
bring yourself to the screen, not the screen to you.
Well, once OLED technology fully delivers on all of its promises, I'll be able to just roll my TV out from the phone. That would be a whole podcast we got to talk about one day. Is I remember when we were OLED was first coming out, I was like, oh my God, you're just gonna have these rolled up newspapers in your back pocket, and then it's just gonna be the news is just gonna be changing on there. You're
Mm,
like, oh man, and then 10 years goes by.
still waiting. Still waiting.
Oh yeah,
Flexible
still
screens.
waiting.
I want the flying cars. That's the one I'm waiting. But
Yeah, flying cars would be great.
that's well. Let
Or,
me. So this is great conversation, William.
yep.
I want to
Sorry.
get to one question from an earlier guest, and then I'll let you
Okay.
ask an Industry 4.0 question for one of our next guests, and maybe then we'll good conversation, but maybe we'll wind it down from there. So, question from an earlier guest: what is some siloed data that you would want to act on if you could? What's something that you're not seeing pulled in yet, or it's not there, or yeah,
This is going to be very biased for me. Uh, is probably sales data. Sales
like
data.
retail?
Yeah,
Okay.
because one of the things, and this is real specific. Like I'm sure every business has this, but with us is that, we kind of get told our volumes are, oh, your volumes are down. But it kind of comes from, voice on high. The volumes are down. We don't actually, so much get acts good. I think that the sales day is a little, siloed for us to kind of see that, to see where the trends are ourselves. Like I
Hmm.
said, kind of that democratization of data. It'd be nice to see, so because I think maybe if we did, then maybe you would have more ideas, maybe from the plant floor to say like, I see where, so I'm looking at your sales data. I think I kind of see where, maybe like what was it, the Mayo Chup, like one of those things like that. It's like, there's definitely people want ghost peppers in their mayonnaise. I think that we need something like that. I just think it would be really good. I think I would like to know sometimes, what the you know volume forecasts are kind of based on some of things like, oh, your volume's going to be cut in half next month. What? And then like, oh, I see the sales data. I see what's going on here.
Hmm.
Or
I mean, in
or
sales is a key. That's an interesting one because
I
that's
know, and I know some people see
super
it.
sensitive.
I know, I
That
know
that's
that's one
like
of them, but
there's
sometimes you go,
probably when the
really?
sales and marketing and planning people pull that, they probably have two keys. They got to
Oh, I
turn them at
bet.
the same time. There's like a briefcase
I
somewhere
bet
with a bunch.
somebody has to
Yeah,
snap open a little
yeah.
piece
I
of
mean, that's
plastic. It's got
that is
your key
very
in it.
sensitive stuff. But it is also, to your point. I mean, any company, even I'll say Grantek, sales is the heart of, like, no one's doing anything unless you have sales. So the
Yeah.
sales is the heart of a company's success, and connecting the information about sales down to people who care about the business, who understand the business, and maybe aren't in a sales role but are doing stuff that ultimately connects up to it. I can see value that they would add. It's but Yeah, that's a great one. It's a good one. And I don't think we're often not thinking about, I think on this podcast, I'll say I'm guilty. We're not thinking about outside the plant stuff or even things in the plant. And I know you can connect timesheet data up into ERP and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
that's been done. But you talked about your punch cards. All those ancillary systems, security, clock in, clock out, punch cards, all those other, I mean, quality is one that maybe we're thinking a little more on that, but connecting all those other pieces too, and sales and advertising response and engagement on that. Like, there's lots of other pieces of data out in the world that are out of the plant, or some potentially still in the plant that we're not thinking of. So good point to try to think bigger
Hmm.
than just that line and that vibration and that flow meter kind of piece at times. So
Oh yeah.
what is an industry 4.0 question that you would like answered from one of our guests?
I was trying to think about this, and I guess one of them, and this is more, this is, I guess, more of my background with programming. I just wonder when do you think we're going to have like true machine learning? That things that learns and rewrites code as it operates. So that it's kind of like the shifting sands. It keeps making. Remember, we used to talk about genetic algorithms. These things that would run samples and then say, okay, well, I got a better result when I did this. So I'm going to change my code, for this. And I've seen the studies before where they've done that with electronics, where they would just have a program that would, because it could try so many different things, and then it would learn as it went, and then it would come up with designs that we had never thought of that looked silly to us, but because so that's one of the things I get interested in is because the machine can try so many, millions of things faster than I can do it. Like I could try this or I could try that.
Hmm.
um, is when do you think we're going to have like what I think of true machine learning? Is when you say like, okay, if you're designing an operating system, you let the machine design its own operating system. You say, well, here's base. Now I put code in here, so okay. Oh, now if I do this, then I have better response from the memory. That because the flip side of that question is that if it kind of writes itself, then what do you do if it goes awry? Because that's not your code anymore. It's rewritten its own code. Is there something that you can do with it? But it's just something that fascinates me, is that we're getting to where we'll I mean, now you can already ask AI um to do code, which, by the way, anyone that listens to the podcast, that's cheating. Learn how to code. All right, don't do that. I was talking to one of my coding buddies the other day who was doing something. He says, so I asked it if it could do this in Python. I was like, oh. you just lost some respect, buddy. Don't ask it to code stuff. But you can already ask it to do code, and I've looked at it, and it's passable code, and it's just going to get better. So the next step is that, okay, well, someday it's going to, when it writes its
Rewrite
own code.
itself. Yeah, I mean, the genetic algorithm is an interesting. If it can try so many things so quickly, essentially it can evolve at a
Right.
speed way faster than
Absolutely.
biological things. It can evolve faster than Pokemon could. I mean, it's going to level up.
Yeah, it's Pokemon level evolution, that's for sure.
So where does that go? And at that speed, and when it I guess when the ball really starts rolling, once the ball, I mean, okay, well, so we'll ask a guess, but just once the ball starts rolling on that, once it gets to the point where it can self-evolve and self-improve all the way, it'll just 20 seconds later, it'll be super mega god mode, and you'll know you'll know, or
Right. Then it
it'll
doesn't want to
call us.
answer your question. It's like, this is a stupid question. I'm not answering it.
Perhaps
I've evolved to the point I don't want to answer your question.
evolved to the point of surliness. It's
Yeah, I just
could be common.
that's I guess is where does AI ultimately, where does it ultimately lead us when you get in, like, say, the true machine? Not so much generative AI is one thing, but I think that when you're really applying those principles to the coding of itself, that's the thing that interests me, is that
Mhm.
you'll have those evolutionary leaps, I believe. Of course, now that being said, creating the bounds for it, for the testing to know what's successful and not, that's obviously a very complicated thing to do. But 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 I don't believe that's beyond the bounds, and at some point you'll have something that is very different than what you coded, right?
Yep.
It'll the question will be, what does it do? Or if you needed to, can you make a modification to it anymore? I mean, especially if you just put it on a loop and it's just constantly trying to make itself better.
Good
Then
question.
you get a then you get a quantum computer. I should ask about quantum computing. That'll really, so it actually goes back in time and gives you the answer.
uh, I gotta say, my head hurts on most time
I know it.
travel.
Whenever,
Most time travel movies, my head really hurts, and then I'm still trying to work it out days
oh,
later. But
I thought you were going to say, when you start looking at if you ever do the studies on quantum computers, and you're looking at it going, "Wow, that's such a different way of thinking." It's hard for me to get my head wrapped around it. It's a qubit. No, it's not a 0 1. It's a qubit. It's all answers. Well, if it's all answers, there's no answers, right? I don't understand this.
honestly, great conversation. Thank you so much
Oh,
for
no
coming on
problem.
the show.
Hope I wasn't boring or anything.
No, absolutely not. Some good laughs, and some good laughs, and some good insights, some good stories for people listening on the kinds of things that are being done at a major manufacturer, some of the successes, some of the approaches, some of the people side, as well as the
Mhm.
technology side and the business side. Thank you very much.
Of course,
Great
man.
to have you.
Anytime.
Awesome.
It was good talking to you. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone listening. We would love to hear from you. Please follow Grantek on LinkedIn to stay up to date with everything we're doing. Subscribe to the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek, wherever you get your podcasts. If you have any questions or feedbacks or thoughts on our show, please email info@grantek.com, GRANTEK. And please join us next time on the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek.